My family flew to Florida for Christmas and left me behind, because they said I wasn't real family. Turns out my two sisters aren't either. I, 28M, grew up in Chicago, the middle child in what I thought was a close family: mom, dad, my older sister Emma, 32F, and my younger sister Lily, 25F. For most of my life, I always felt like the odd one out. They weren't cruel to me, but there was always this distance. Inside jokes I wasn't part of, family photos where I was somehow always at the edge, and constant reminders that I was different. I never thought too much of it until last Christmas. Every year, we spent Christmas together, big dinner, gifts, movies, everything. But last year, around mid-December, my family started talking about something special for the holidays. They said they were planning a big family trip, but they were oddly quiet whenever I asked where. Then one morning, I woke up to an empty house and a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "We're going to Florida for Christmas. It's just best if you stay home this year. We'll talk when we get back." No explanation. No call. Just that. At first, I thought it was some kind of misunderstanding, maybe I'd messed up somehow or they were planning to surprise me later. But when I checked my sister's Instagram later that day, there it was, a full family photo at O'Hare Airport, all of them smiling in matching Christmas pajamas, captioned, "Finally, a real family Christmas in Florida, son, red heart." Real family. That line broke me. I turned off my phone and didn't leave my apartment for days. I didn't even open their gifts when they came back, though they barely brought me anything anyway. When they finally returned, I confronted my mom. She hesitated, then said something I'll never forget. "You've always been a bit different, honey. We thought maybe it would be less awkward for everyone if it was just us this year. You're not actually biologically ours, anyway." I was stunned. Apparently, my mom had trouble conceiving, and after Emma was born, they adopted me as a baby, something they never told me, and then, a few years later, she miraculously got pregnant with Lily. I just stood there speechless. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out. A few weeks later, though, karma hit. My aunt, mom's sister, called me one night. She told me she'd seen my post about what happened and wanted me to know the full truth. Turns out, the adoption story wasn't exactly right. Yes, I was adopted, but so were Emma and Lily. My mom couldn't have biological children at all. All three of us came from different mothers. My parents just never told any of us the truth. When I confronted them again, my mom broke down crying, saying she didn't want to ruin the family bond. But I couldn't help but ask. Then why was I the one treated like I didn't belong? She didn't have an answer. Since then, I've cut contact. It's been almost a year now. I spent last Christmas alone, but honestly, it was the most peaceful one I've had in years. I didn't have to watch people pretend to love me while secretly believing I was less than them. Here's the ironic part: after the truth came out, my sisters started fighting too. Emma and Lily both got DNA tests done, and when the results confirmed they weren't related by blood, they turned on our parents. Now the real family that went to Florida together doesn't even speak to each other. Sometimes I think about reaching out, but then I remember how it felt to see that Instagram post, and I remind myself that blood, adoption, or whatever else doesn't define family. Respect does. And they lost mine the moment they left me behind. It's been a full year since my family abandoned me for that Florida Christmas trip. A year since I learned I was adopted, and that both my sisters were too. A year since I stopped answering their calls, messages, and half-hearted apologies. I thought I was done with them. But life has a way of reopening wounds you think have already scarred over. The Christmas invitation. It started a few weeks before Christmas this year. I got a handwritten card in the mail. Not a text. Not an email. A physical card, addressed to me with my full name, to our son, Michael. Inside was a message written in my mom's handwriting. We know we hurt you deeply last year. We can't undo that, but we want to make things right. Please come to Christmas dinner. No Florida trips. Just family. We miss you. There was also a photo tucked inside, an old picture of me as a baby, sitting on my dad's lap, both of us smiling. It looked so genuine that for a second, I almost felt that old warmth again. Almost. I ignored the card at first. I told myself I'd moved on. I had a new apartment, a decent job, a couple of good friends who actually treated me like I mattered. Why dig up old pain? But something about that letter gnawed at me. I think it was because, for the first time in a long while, it didn't sound fake. The unexpected visitor. A week later, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, my older sister Emma was standing there, holding a tin of cookies and looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Mike," she said quietly. "Please don't shut the door." I didn't. Not right away. She looked nervous, her hands trembling as she spoke. "I know you probably hate us. You should. I just need to tell you something." She told me that after the truth came out, that all three of us were adopted, the whole family imploded. My mom fell into depression. My dad started drinking again. Lily moved out and hadn't spoken to anyone for months. Emma had been trying to piece things together, but there was one detail my aunt had left out, something none of them had known. "We weren't just adopted from different mothers," Emma said. "We were adopted through different agencies. And your adoption wasn't through the same channels as ours." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I found your adoption file," she said. "You weren't adopted through an agency at all. You were taken in privately." The file. She handed me a small envelope, old, yellowed with age. Inside was a set of papers with my baby photo stapled to the corner. The name on the birth certificate wasn't mine. It said Lucas D. My birth parents' names were listed too. Emma explained that Mom had told her I came from a special situation. Apparently, my biological mother had been a 17-year-old girl from a nearby town who couldn't keep me. My adoptive parents had helped her out financially, and she'd agreed to let them raise me. No agencies, no records, everything was done quietly. I felt sick. I'd spent my whole life being treated like an outsider, and it turned out I wasn't just adopted. I was basically a secret. I told Emma to leave. She tried to apologize again, but I couldn't handle it. That night, I just sat there staring at that piece of paper. Lucas. That was my real name. Finding the truth. A few days later, I couldn't resist. I searched for my biological mother's name online. It didn't take long, she was still living in Illinois, just 2 hours away. Married now, with a family. I debated for days whether to reach out. I even typed out a message to her Facebook account. "Hi, this might sound strange, but I think I'm your son. I was adopted privately in 1996. Then I deleted it. I didn't want to ruin her life. But fate didn't care what I wanted. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a woman named Sarah D. "Michael, or should I say Lucas? I've been waiting 28 years for this message. I never knew what happened to you. Can we talk?" My heart nearly stopped. We met a few days later at a small cafe outside Joliet. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately, same eyes, same smile. She looked at me for a long moment before whispering, "You look just like your grandfather." We talked for hours. She told me she was pressured to give me up by her parents, who were religious and strict. My adoptive parents had been family friends of a lawyer who handled private adoptions discreetly. She had no idea they'd kept my adoption secret, or that they'd ever make me feel unwanted. When she found out how they'd treated me, she broke down crying right there in the cafe. The confrontation. After that, something inside me shifted. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want forgiveness. I just wanted closure. So I went to the Christmas dinner. It was quiet, awkward, and full of tension. My mom tried to smile, my dad stayed mostly silent, and my sisters looked like they were walking on glass. Halfway through dinner, I pulled out the birth certificate. "I met her," I said. My mom froze. My dad dropped his fork. "I met my real mother," I continued. "She told me everything. The truth you both decided to hide." Mom started sobbing. "We just wanted a family," she said. "We thought if we raised you all together, maybe it wouldn't matter." I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Then why was I always treated like I didn't belong?" No one answered. The silence was louder than any shouting could have been. A new Christmas. I didn't stay long that night. I said goodbye and left before dessert. This Christmas, I'm spending it with Sarah, my biological mom, and her family. They welcomed me like I'd always been there. Her husband shook my hand and said, "You're home, son." I didn't expect to cry, but I did. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider at my own table. Sometimes, I still get messages from my old family. "Mom's in therapy now. Emma wants to rebuild a relationship. Maybe one day I'll let them. But not yet. Because for the first time in my life, I finally know who I am." And this year, I didn't have to spend Christmas waiting for someone to remember I exist, because I found the people who never forgot me in the first place. I thought meeting my biological mom, Sarah, would be the end of the story, a neat emotional closure to a lifetime of confusion. But instead, it opened another door I didn't know existed. A door that led to secrets, money, and lies buried deep enough to ruin lives. A Christmas that finally felt real. This past Christmas with Sarah and her family was the first one where I actually felt like I belonged. There was no awkward silence, no fake smiles, no one comparing gifts or taking perfect family photos for Instagram. Just warmth. Laughter. Real people. Sarah introduced me to her husband, Tom, and my two half-siblings, Megan, 14, and Kyle, 11. They'd known about me for years, apparently. Sarah had told them she'd had a baby young who'd been adopted, but she didn't know where he was. When I walked through the door, they both hugged me like they'd known me forever. That moment alone made the pain of last Christmas worth it. But a few days later, something unexpected happened. The lawyer's call. It was a Wednesday when Sarah got a call from her family lawyer. He said he'd been cleaning up old files and found something strange, a private adoption contract from 1996 involving her, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, and a payment of $10,000. Her face went pale when she read it. They paid my parents," she whispered. It turned out, my grandparents, Sarah's parents, hadn't just arranged the adoption. They'd sold me to my adoptive parents in exchange for money, calling it financial assistance for the family. It wasn't legal. Not even close. The lawyer told us that if we wanted to, we could report it, though after almost 30 years, it would mostly be symbolic. But it wasn't just about the law anymore. It was about truth. And the truth had to come out. The confrontation, round 2. I didn't want to go, but Sarah insisted we face them together. So the week after New Year's, we drove to my old neighborhood in Chicago and showed up at my adoptive parents' house. When my mom opened the door, her face went white. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, already defensive. Sarah stepped forward and said quietly, "We need to talk about what you paid for in 1996. They didn't deny it. My dad sighed and said, "We didn't buy him. We just helped your parents out. It was a private matter." I stared at him. "You paid $10,000 for me. You treated me like property for 28 years. My mom started crying, babbling about how they'd just wanted a child, how they'd loved me like their own. But her tears didn't feel like guilt, they felt like regret for being caught. Sarah pulled out the document and placed it on the table. You could have adopted legally. But you didn't want the system to know. You wanted him quietly. Why? My dad didn't answer, but his silence said enough. They didn't want to risk being denied, because at the time, they were already under financial investigation for unpaid taxes. The private adoption had been their way to get what they wanted without scrutiny. The fallout. After that confrontation, everything changed fast. Sarah's lawyer filed a report, mostly for the record, but it still triggered an investigation. The authorities contacted both families. My adoptive parents were questioned about the illegal transaction, though the statute of limitations had long expired. Still, their reputation took a massive hit. My dad's small accounting business lost clients overnight once word got around. My mom's church friends stopped calling. I didn't celebrate any of it, though. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. But watching them finally face consequences for years of deceit, it was surreal. Emma and Lily both reached out again, apologizing for how they treated me growing up. Emma admitted that Mom had always been harder on me, telling the girls to keep an eye on me, as if I was some stranger in their home. Hearing that broke something in me all over again. Meeting the grandparents. Sarah eventually told her parents she'd found me. They were less than thrilled. Her father tried to justify it, saying, "We thought we were doing what was best for everyone." But her mother looked at me and said softly, "You look like you turned out all right." It wasn't an apology. It was a dismissal. I walked out of their house that day and didn't look back. Sarah hugged me in the car and said, "You were never meant to be sold. You were meant to be loved. A new name, a new start." I legally changed my name back to Lucas Michael D. It felt like reclaiming something that had been stolen before I was old enough to speak. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a ghost walking through someone else's story. Sarah and her husband asked me to move closer, they even offered the guest house out back. I said yes. Now, I see my little brother and sister almost every day. They call me Luke. Last week, we decorated our own Christmas tree, one that didn't feel like a staged photo for show. We hung a small ornament with 1996 carved into it, the year I was born, and the year my life was stolen. But underneath it, we added another, 2024. The year I got it back. The final message. A few nights ago, I got an email from my adoptive mom. Just one line. "We'll never forgive ourselves. But we still love you." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because love without truth isn't love, it's control dressed up as care. And after almost 3 decades of being someone else's secret, I finally have something they can never take again. Myself. Final part, the last Christmas. This year, I didn't wait for an invitation. I didn't check my phone, or scroll through photos of people pretending to be a family. I spent Christmas morning at Sarah's house, my real home now, drinking coffee, laughing with my siblings, and feeling something I hadn't felt in years, peace. No secrets. No lies. Just warmth. My old family never reached out again after that last email, and honestly, I hope they find whatever healing they need. But that part of my life is over. I finally stopped chasing people who never wanted me, and started loving the ones who always would that I wasn't the one left behind. They were.